My parents chose my sister over me for a dream vacation, but she ruined everything, got arrested, and finally exposed her true colors. I, a 25-year-old woman, have a younger sister, Luna, who is 19. In my eyes, she represents everything wrong in the world. Over the years, I've tried to make my parents see her true nature, but they always dismissed my concerns. Until recently. To put things in context, my relationship with my parents was always quite strained, pretty much due to Luna. They adore her completely, ever since she came after Mom's devastating miscarriage. The arrival of Luna brought immense happiness to my parents, and they found in her a miracle child who healed their pain. She became the center of their world and received all the love and attention. I want to make it clear that when we were kids, I cared very deeply for my sister. As time went by, though, I really started noticing things about her. Luna has a marvelous talent for manipulation and is unbelievably good at appearing as the victim. Most unfortunately, these traits always seemed to blind my family. One time, on my birthday, I got a very pretty antique necklace from our grandparents. It was really special since my grandma assured me it was an antique, family heirloom thing. I was absolutely psyched, but Luna was not pleased for me. She was jealous. Her jealousy showed in that every now and then she begged me to let her wear it. I did not give it to her since the present was only for me. She even went to the extent of getting our parents involved, but since it was a gift that came from our grandparents, there wasn't much they could do. The next night, Luna put a house spider inside my pillowcase. When I lay down to bed, I felt something that made me jump out of my skin, the sensation of a spider crawling on me. I screamed in terror. My parents rushed into my room and were so worried about what happened. Of course, Luna played innocent, acting surprised and concerned. Later, when we were alone, she admitted what she had done, showing a wicked grin and saying it was to teach me a lesson. I was quite amazed at how unashamed she was of that and how easily she confessed. One incident that I shall never forget was when I finally mustered the courage to invite a classmate whom I had a crush on, named Tom, to watch a movie. I was pretty excited and dressed to impress him. No sooner did Tom arrive than my sister, Luna, intentionally poured a whole cup of coffee all over my dress. Her laughter echoed as hysteria beamed from her face at my humiliation. I was utterly mortified and had to change, trying my best to cover up my embarrassment. But Luna wasn't finished. She started telling embarrassing childhood stories about me in front of Tom, making me feel worse. She did not leave us alone for the entire duration of the movie. When it was time for Tom to leave, Luna smiled and said to him in such a nonchalant manner that he could do better than me. Tom, who had already seemed uncomfortable, quickly made his exit. I was left in disbelief, unable to fathom how someone could be so intentionally cruel. In the years that followed, I did try to tell my parents about the things Luna was doing, but they brushed it off, saying she was just young and immature. They refused to see her for who she truly was. Anytime I raised concerns, they brushed me off, mostly branding me as the troublemaker in the family. Over time, I gave up trying to speak up and just stopped sharing my frustrations. Luna remained their favorite, while I constantly felt like an outsider in my own family. Determined to build a better future for myself, I worked hard at my studies and got into a good college. But moving out gave me a fresh start and a chance at a happier life. But whenever I came back home during school breaks, Luna made it very clear that she resented my presence. She would ignore me, refuse to engage in even the most basic of conversations, and would not sit anywhere near me during meals. If I said something to our parents, she would interrupt or derail the conversation in such a way that it was painfully obvious she didn't want me around. Laura was constantly undermining my presence, a sure sign that she did not like me. It seemed she made it very uncomfortable for me whenever I visited. She would often tamper with my possessions, saying she needed them, but more often than not, they would break or disappear. When this was brought up to my parents, it was dismissed as something in which we needed to learn to get along, rather than being taken seriously. Over time, I began to avoid going home for breaks. I'd make excuses to spend the holidays with my college buddies and their families. And actually, my folks didn't seem to take much offense. They must have assumed I was really out being independent, free of the nest. When Luna graduated from high school, her grades weren't good enough to get into university, so she went to a community college. That way, she could stay at home with our parents, never having to leave. Now I am working in a tech company in New York. I do like where I work, actually. Although I do occasionally reach out to them, I almost never go home. I have absolutely no contact with Luna these days. Now to the story. My father recently suffered from a nearly fatal heart attack. He was lucky to have survived and was rushed to the hospital in time. As soon as my mother called to inform me about the whole incident, I booked a flight immediately to be there for both of them. After recovering, doctors prescribed him lots of medicines and urged him to lead an active lifestyle. Since his discharge, my father has been very interested in spending time with the family, often expressing how grateful he was to have been given a second chance at life. Understanding what this meant to him, I decided to stay over at their place for a few days. Fortunately, my job allows me to work from anywhere, so this was not an issue. But I couldn't help noticing how visibly disturbed Luna was because of my presence. I tried to stay out of her way all day, not wanting to get into any fights, and certainly not under these somber circumstances due to Father's frail condition. One morning, having breakfast, my dad got this bright idea that we should go on a family trip somewhere, since it had been many years since we last traveled together. I was quite reluctant at first, but then I agreed, seeing how much it meant to him. Luna didn't like the idea, but accepted the plan since it was something our dad wanted. My dad had made all the arrangements, from flight bookings to hotel reservations. I had taken leave way in advance and had given instructions to my team not to contact me at any point in time during my break. I really wanted to spend some quality time with my parents. I was in for a very rude shock in the airport. My flight had been canceled. I looked at my father in complete confusion as he insisted that he had booked and paid for all the tickets. It was only through further inquiry that we came to know that out of the 4 tickets, mine alone had been mysteriously canceled. As I struggled to make sense of the scene before me, my gaze automatically shifted to Luna. She was wearing her sly grin, one with which I was all too familiar, the smug look she always wore when she had just pulled off one of her stunts. In that instant, it became clear to me that she was the one responsible. She must have logged into my father's computer and canceled my ticket, knowing full well it would ruin the trip for me. I was livid. I confronted her, and she just stood there silently, that smug smile never leaving her face. I turned to my parents and started to explain how this was all Luna's doing, and she never actually intended to let me come along on this family vacation. Instead of listening to me, my mother dismissed my accusations. "Your sister would never do something like that," she said firmly, and added that I should stop being jealous of Luna. She waved the incident away, saying it was just some random glitch or mistake, and that Luna had nothing to do with it. My dad even went so far as to try to rationalize how it could be an airline mistake and even implored me not to be too quick to judge my sister. I was really annoyed at how my parents couldn't even put aside the thought that their precious golden child could actually do something like this. At that moment, I was at a loss. The ticket could no longer be rebooked because it had already been canceled and there were no further flights that day. Though it would technically have been possible for me to leave the following day, the thought of going back home, rebooking a ticket, and traveling alone was too discouraging. After all, this was supposed to be a family trip. Adding to my reluctance was the prospect of being stuck sharing a room with Luna throughout the journey. I had hoped she had outgrown some of her old habits, but if indeed it were her doing, I couldn't help but wonder what else she might have planned to make my experience miserable. Initially, my father was hesitant and even suggested that the whole trip be postponed so we could plan something else later. My father then proceeded to go on and on about how long it had been since he'd taken a vacation, and how my mother agreed with him and told me that I traveled extensively for work, so this vacation would not be a big deal if I didn't go. Their comments took the wind out of me. It was as if they wanted me to get out of their way so that they could take the vacation without me. I told them they were welcome to continue with their plans, and they quickly agreed. Though I didn't want their money to go to waste on the tickets and accommodations, it was clear they didn't care if I joined them. It was clear they were fine and dandy about going on this family trip as a family of 3. Anyhow, there I was, standing alone in the airport, watching my parents and Luna leave for their well-deserved vacation. I decided to return home to New York and not stick around another day by myself in the family house. I tried to brush the entire incident off and just enjoy the remainder of my time off. I reconnected with old friends, dove into books, and turned my break into a solo retreat. During their trip, my parents sometimes video called me, and one could see that they were having a good time without me. It was evident that my absence didn't make a difference in their enjoyment. Though I wasn't going to be heartbroken over the missed vacation, I couldn't help but feel left out. It was another bitter reminder of the favoritism that had always been in our family. I only hoped someday my parents would finally see Luna for who she really was, and it looked like that day had arrived. A few days into their trip, I woke up to a number of missed calls from my mom. Panicked that something disastrous could have happened to Dad's health, I called her back right away. She picked up, sounding terribly distraught. I asked if everything was okay, and she said that something very disturbing had occurred. As it turned out, my parents had been noticing that my father's critical heart medication was slowly disappearing. This became a very big deal because, due to his poor health, he couldn't afford to miss his medication. They were abroad at the time, and they were not sure whether the same medication would be available outside the US, so understandingly, they were worried. In the course of a frantic search for the missing pills, my mother had taken a chance, entering the hotel room next door to Luna's to borrow some sunscreen. My mother made a horrific discovery while Luna was out. All the missing medications were well hidden inside the bedside table of Luna. It was quite a horrifying revelation, and she immediately called my father. He barged in and found all the missing medications that had been disappearing over the past few days. This was the moment the truth finally hit them. Their beloved daughter, the so-called miracle child, had been deliberately endangering my father's health, putting him at serious risk. My mom's voice was shaking when she asked me if they should confront Luna about what happened. I told her not to talk with Luna yet. They needed some time to gather their thoughts, calm down from the emotional part of this, and collect some evidence to present to her about the truth that was irrefutable. I knew it would be useless to bring it up to Luna then and there. She was a professional manipulator, full of excuses to avoid taking responsibility. But something must have finally snapped. It appears my parents, after all, brought it up to her. I received a late-night call from my father, his voice shaking as he told me that Luna was in jail. I was stunned. He told me how Luna had lost all control when they confronted her about the missing medications. She tossed objects and yelled insults. Most of her anger was directed towards my father. She accused him of having booked a ticket for me when I never should have been put on their family trip in the first place. She warned them that if they ever continued the relationship with me, she would teach them a lesson they would never forget. And as Luna's tantrum continued, things only escalated. Someone in the hotel had to phone the police. When they arrived, Luna refused to be placated and even berated them, for which she was arrested. She would be released in 24 hours, but there was nothing my parents could do at that point. And then, after Luna got out, my parents tried to rebook their flight home and discovered that their passports and wallets were missing. Turns out she must have thrown their passports away or something because my parents were stuck in a foreign country with no identification and no money. I guess that was the first time my parents truly saw Luna for who she was. My mom, who had always defended her, was now desperately asking me for help because they were stuck without a way to get back home. She felt overwhelmed, shocked, and deeply saddened to be convinced of the reality of her angelic daughter. I told them I would wire the money to Western Union, but first they had to find their passports so they could get flights home. I knew Luna hadn't just left them by the wayside. My parents were finally starting to see that I had been honest all along about how Luna was acting. They were just thankful for my help, despite what they did to begin with. A small part of me wanted me to forgive them, but it is hard when you remember how you have been treated all those years. It's hard to shake the feeling that I've been deprived of their love all these years because of their favoritism toward Luna. Part of me feels justified for not forgiving them, especially since they went on that vacation without me, and now, after experiencing some of the consequences of their actions, they return, seeking my forgiveness. Every day, my parents call with updates, and I'm becoming more anxious about their situation. After Luna was released from jail, my parents gave her an ultimatum: either return the passports or they would call the authorities again. With no other option, Luna finally revealed where she had hidden them. When my parents returned, they confronted Luna, telling her to pack her bags and get out. They had finally reached their breaking point, finally realizing the magnitude of their daughter's manipulative and abusive behavior. The fact that she had put my father's health at risk once again by stealing his medications really was the icing on the cake as far as my parents were concerned. This, of course, was followed by another screaming match between Luna and my parents. In the middle of the confrontation, Luna began to lash out at my parents with all the angry and bitter things she had been storing up inside. She said she didn't want to share them with anyone and that she was pushed to the limit when they invited me on the trip. She kept hammering them again and again with the fact that they should disown me since she was more than enough for both of them. It was at this point that my parents must have fully realized the extent of her jealousy, how much she begrudged me for my place in the family. Though they tried to reason with her, she continued to scream accusations. In a fit of desperation and rage, she threatened to go around telling everyone that they had neglected and mistreated her during her childhood, even accusing them of parental negligence. She then threatened to go to the police and make false allegations against our parents if they insisted that she leave. This really scared them, since it is well known that the fabricated accusations could put them in a very complicated situation, given their stature as respected doctors within our community. Just the possibility of their reputation being tarnished by such false accusations has them feeling trapped and anxious. Things just got even worse with Luna in the past few days. She was so mad that she got very upset when she learned they had been speaking with me all this time. In a moment, she smashed some of her plates. Worse still, she was picking up and hiding their car keys, just to prevent them from getting out. Just tonight, she was crying on the phone to me about another incident at dinner. Luna had a meltdown because she wanted my mother to cook for her. When my mother refused, pointing out that she was tired from work, Luna lashed out. She started smashing furniture and then went to her room, blasting music at a volume that deprived our parents of any rest. The situation is getting worse and worse, and it's really starting to take a big emotional and mental toll on my parents. I am getting quite worried about what will happen next. I have been hoping for so long that my parents would finally see Luna for what she really is, but now I fear she can be an actual danger to them. I can't even go home now because that will infuriate her and provoke another explosive confrontation. I am trying hard to get my parents to talk to an attorney for us to look for permanent solutions to the crisis now being faced by us. Legally, that seems the most reasonable avenue to be taken to salvage my parents and bring back peace into the family. Update 2. As most of you probably expected, Luna has been arrested. She's been getting more and more unstable, so it was bound to happen sooner or later. One night, while having a big fight, Luna went to our parents with a knife. It scared them, and they didn't really have a choice but to call the police. The officer showed up pretty quickly and arrested her for assault. With Luna taken into custody, our parents have finally decided it was time to seek more permanent solutions. They sought legal advice from a lawyer who outlined the procedure for evicting Luna from their house. After much deliberation, they filed a formal eviction notice, making it clear that Luna had to leave. They understood that this was not going to be an easy thing, but knew that it was necessary for their safety. My parents decided not to go further with the charges against her. The only thing they wanted was for her to move out. They bailed her out of jail and handed her the eviction notice, which laid out the legal reasons for her removal and the deadline by which she needed to leave. They made sure all the paperwork was correct so that Luna couldn't challenge the decision. Then, they went to court with their lawyer and began the formal process of eviction by filing a lawsuit against her. It was a difficult decision for my parents as it meant taking their own daughter to court. They felt sad, guilty, and trapped, but they knew they had no other option. In the end, the court issued an official order requiring Luna to vacate the premises. If she refused, my parents would have the legal right to remove her from the property. Luna is set to move out by next week, and my parents are finally starting to feel some relief. It's been a challenging journey, but they're optimistic that life will improve once Luna leaves. I've been in close contact with them throughout the situation and have decided to bring them to New York for a few weeks. That way, it will be a much-needed break for them to at least take their minds off the stress they've gone through. It will also give us a chance to reconnect and spend some quality time together. I want to do all I can to support them in this transition. Update 3. I've received hundreds of comments on my last post and have read through every single one of them. Many people suggested checking if maybe Luna could have some kind of mental illness. Understandably, however, seeing as she's an adult, we can't make her go get checked out or see a professional against her will. This was the really hard part, especially with her being all over the place in these sudden outbursts. We're trying to be very sensitive and not make things more complicated than they already are. Anyway, my folks finally came out to New York to spend some time with me in order to have some time for themselves after all they had gone through. And last night at my dining table, in my little apartment, they finally began to open up and talk about how they were really feeling. With remorseful and humbled voices, they admitted that they had been blind to the real Luna all these years. My dad apologized for ignoring my concerns in the past, saying he never thought Luna could do what she had done. He said that they had been taken in by superficial charm and did not really see what was going on. My mother, her voice shaking, also said that she was sorry and that they made a lot of mistakes whenever they ignored my warnings about the way Luna was acting. She admitted the pain in realizing how they had let me down by favoring Luna at my expense. I told them how much I appreciated their honesty and this effort they were making, seeking forgiveness, and proceeded to share some of the hard times during those years because of the things Luna had done. It wasn't the easiest thing to do. It almost felt like part of a necessary process leading to healing. My parents listened in stunned silence, deeply shaken and heartbroken as they started to realize how much I had been through alone. They said how sorry they were that I'd gone through such pain, and how very regretful they felt for allowing me to be so isolated within my own family. They shared how their partiality toward Luna had been formed by their belief that she was their miracle baby, a child they had not expected after years of uncertainty. That view, they said, had veiled their judgment, causing them to overlook my problems for years. With hearty sincerity, they begged for forgiveness, acknowledging that what they had done really hurt me. It was bittersweet for me, something I had hoped for but hardly expected. While this was not the best way to initiate healing, it was, in a sense, a beginning for us. Long overdue honesty and clarity in the dynamics of our family. For the first time in years, we were finally facing problems that had silently weighed us down. I told them I appreciated their efforts, but explained that it would take time for me to rebuild my trust in them. We agreed to work through this together, one step at a time. For now, I am just trying to make the most of this time with them and taking small steps toward repairing what has been broken. While my parents are here with me for the next few days, we're making the most of our time together. Update 4. My parents and I have had bonding time these past couple of days. We've explored the lively streets of New York, shared relaxed meals, and simply enjoyed each other's company. This has been a much-needed opportunity to rebuild the bonds that had been strained by years of favoritism and denial. I came to realize it was not about creating physical distance between them and Luna, but about the healing process, working on getting back to where the family had almost disintegrated. It was during this time that we also had discussions about what was going on with Luna. She's currently staying with a friend, but we know we can't just abandon her despite everything that has happened. As her parents, my mom and dad still feel a deep sense of responsibility toward her, even though her actions have caused us so much pain. We've started to accept that Luna's behavior might not be a matter of willful defiance, but could reflect underlying issues that need attention. Together, we've decided to explore the possibility of seeking a mental health evaluation for her, hoping it will help us understand her condition better and figure out the best way forward. This process is far from easy, but it feels like an essential step toward finding some resolution for everyone involved. Because Luna is an adult, we can't make her get an evaluation, so we're trying to figure out how to get her to seek help on her own accord. My parents are going to try and get a hold of her once they get home and see if she's open to talking things through. I have decided not to contact Luna personally, since she still retains much resentment toward me and I have no desire to make her condition worse, relating to her mental health. Given the volatile and sometimes aggressive past behavior of Luna, I have counseled my parents to see her in a public place. In such a venue, the setting might create an incentive for her to keep calm and composed. Most importantly, our goal is to help Luna understand our view and, above all else, show her the love and concern that we truly feel for her. This is not about finger-pointing or placing blame, but coming together as a family and looking at and working through the problems that have caused so much strain in our relationships.